welcome everybody to this week's episode of Cafecito. Hope you guys are enjoying this week. This week before Latitude, so next week's going to be great. But today we have a powerful conversation with Brenda. And we're going to be talking about the power of networking and the importance of building a network and how do you build a power network that's really going to help you and elevate you. So yay. So Brenda, welcome and give us your introduction. Tell us who you are, a little bit about you, the projects you're working on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sandra. I'm so excited to be here today. So my name is Brenda Arce, and I'm originally from Puerto Rico, giving you a little bit background, but been here in Miami for now over 20 years. I work in for a staffing company, and I've been with Robert Half, the staffing firm, for about 17 years now. So I definitely have to do a lot of business development, a lot of networking within my business in itself to grow, in general, to be able to grow our business. But I also volunteer with different organizations. Like the one I mostly volunteer with is I'm the vice president for the Latina Pro, which is a movement of professional women. So yeah, both of those things in combined, when you mention the power of networking, are definitely things that I will say that I have to do pretty consistently.
Yeah, I love that. So let's definitely dive right into that. Because even before I started United Latinas, one of the reasons was just going out, like, where are my Latinas? Why
Yeah.
aren't they coming out? Now I'm like hitting up every single networking event, every single chamber event, and wondering why there aren't enough Latinas out there. And if there was another Hispanic, it was a male. Right. So that was
Mhm.
such a, thing for me. Like, how do we
Yeah.
get more Latinas to really understand the value of networking and find those resources so that they can go out there and connect with people? So tell us a little bit about, like, what do you feel is that power? First of all, like, why
Mhm.
should we be out there networking and building connections?
Absolutely. So, I mean, to your point, right? Sometimes you may go to a networking event and think like, well, who is really here to see? And I'm not finding people maybe I'm connecting with. And I think if I were to say the number one tip to do when you're going to be out networking is definitely to investigate the networking event you're going to, right? So not just being like, oh, great, I'm networking, so I'm going to join every single event that's out there, right? I think like when you actually study like who's going to be there, who are the speakers, what type of people I may be able to find that, I'm going to be able to connect with, you're going
Yep.
to enjoy more being able to go out to a networking event, right? It doesn't feel like work, right? So I think that that's important, because sometimes you do go to these networking events besides your job, right? So you don't want it to feel like, oh, I have to go now to another event that's going to be at 6 o'clock, right? So I think that number one, if you're finding where these networking events are, who are the people that are going to be there, you're going to be able to be around people that have your same interests, right? So in your point with Latinas, I actually started going to the Latina Pro because, in the name itself, I'm like, oh, professional Latinas, I want to know them, I want to get to know them, right? So and that's basically how that even started, right? In general, was uniting women that were professionals, that are Latina, that can share points of view, that we could be able to create different webinars and events for them, right? Networking events. So that in itself was something that I was attracted to. Nonprofits that had to do something related for me, like I used to go to a lot of events for the Women's Fund because I was wanting to be around, events that helped, the women of Miami-Dade. So I think that's number one, and in key is to investigate first, where you're going, who are the speakers, what type of people normally go into these events.
Yeah, no, that is such a great point because, yeah, we have only a finite amount of time. So we have to be very intentional and selective. I think it's
Mhm.
definitely worthwhile to put yourself in situations where you may not know who the speakers are because a veces you don't know, right? You're just
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm a business owner or I have a side
Yeah.
hustle and I need to go out there. Or for my business, if you're in sales, you need to be attending some of these events. Sometimes it's like, I don't know anybody, especially new Latinas, right? Like I don't know
Yeah.
anybody there. That shouldn't stop you from attending the event, right? Because you want
Mhm.
to go check it out. Then you get in the groove of like being able to like, okay, I
Yeah.
know kind of what this event is about. That's probably not where I need to spend my time. So I love that you said that. Be intentional, really
Mhm.
understand who's going to be at these events, but also don't steer away from being the, checking something out, because you never
Yeah.
know, that's the beauty of those connections, is you don't know what can transpire, and you
What
won't.
can come along from it. I think you and I met at a financial
Yeah.
networking event at first, right? So absolutely, definitely give it a go. And if, and I was invited by, were invited by a mutual friend, right? So, but that's how we met, right? Was, in something that was completely different. And yeah, I know that sometimes people can get a little shy because you go to a networking event, I don't know anyone, you stand in a corner and wait for someone to just come up to you. But I think that people, just give it a go. Try not to be shy. Just try to, and people know that you're when you're in these events, it's also an opportunity to meet new people. So I think, if you go and you introduce yourself to someone, they're not going to be like, oh, this person is like, like bothering me, right? Because realistically, a lot of people go with that same intention to meet new people.
Yeah. And that is such a great point, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes, if I've come across, like, when I go to events, some people just come up to me and, hey, this is what I do, and if you need this, here's my card. So there is a dance to that world, right? So
Hmm.
tell us a little bit about how you navigate that dance, because there's nothing more like, okay, well, I don't even know you yet. No, I don't want your
Yeah.
card. I don't, I don't know. I don't think so like there is
Yes.
a beautiful dance to how you can communicate in these spaces. How do you go about doing that?
Mhm. No, I agree with you. It's definitely something that you kind of like start perfecting. And I think that when you stop going with the sales mentality to these events, and I think you can tell, right, when you go to a place and already nice to meet you, and already someone's trying to sell you something, right? No, just go with the intention that you're realistically going to meet people and get to really know that person, right? So I would say, like, definitely number one, that, the most common thing, the elevator pitch, right? So always knows, like, in something simple, like, what do you do, what something about you, right, where it's short and sweet, but it's a nice introduction where people can remember who you are. And definitely then ask questions and really try listening to what the people have to say. Maybe find something that is more a common ground, right? Then just immediately start like, oh, and by the way, if you need something, here's my business card, right? So I think you really first should try to meet that person and see what they're about first.
Absolutely. We got somebody that wrote, I live in San Juan for 4 years. Liza del Encanto. Yes, it's Ella.
Yeah.
Another LinkedIn user, let's not skip the relationship building part, which is exactly what you just said. It's the most pivotal
Mhm.
part, is to really go there to serve, right? Go there to get to
Yeah.
know people, and if when people say, oh, I don't know what to ask, there are people there. They have lives, ask them,
Yeah.
where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What led you to this industry? Is this something new for
Mhm.
you? Have you been in this industry, in this field for a long time? So there's a myriad of questions when it comes to how do we connect with the human being
Mhm.
behind that, versus looking at it as an intimidating, oh crap, I either have to sell my business, or they're going to, I have to just talk about me,
Mhm.
versus, well, let me get to know you, Brenda. Oh, you're from Puerto
Exactly.
Rico. Oh, what's up?
Exactly. You find that one thing in common, and that makes a huge difference because people will also remember you. But you're only going to get there if you actually just, talk to people and not make it feel so forced. I think that, and, I mean, maybe you don't find that one person there, but just continue to meet people, like, and I'm sure, from a big event, you're going to always find one or two people, and that's all you need. You don't need to go and leave with 20 contacts, right? I prefer to meet one person that I'm going to speak to, that it's not just going to be like, okay, well, great, met you at the event and I never hear from you again, right? I prefer to meet one or two people than just get 20 business cards and not, have them in my desk and not do anything with them.
Yeah, yeah. How do you feel like, and I don't know how long you've been networking, right?
Hmm.
Pretty decent amount of time. But how do you feel it evolved over time? Like, the way you approach networking or selecting events, and then I want to get to
Hmm.
what you use actually to find local events. But have you felt that it has evolved in a way, from just the whole process of communicating and finding the events?
Hmm. Well, for me, I think the biggest change is like, well, as as time passes and we grow and all that, now that I'm a mom of a 4-year-old too, which adds it into my little list of things, right? I do have to be more selective with what networking events I go to, right? So for me, it definitely is very important that it is something that it has, like I mentioned in the beginning, of my interest, because if I'm taking that time away, right, I want to definitely be able to go to something where I'm going to enjoy it, right? But yeah, I think that through signing up through different things and joining different groups on LinkedIn or being on sometimes even on Instagram, you find a lot of different groups, right, that are constantly promoting their different events. I think that you do get to see what is out there, what's happening this week, what's coming up, and you can kind of like plan ahead if it's something that you would be able to attend to or not. So I think that definitely you see it much more because everyone is trying to promote that, that particular event. But you're going to find them if you're following already something of your interest or people of your interest, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. And LinkedIn, I think, is an invaluable tool. Like if you know
Yeah.
people, you're like, man, I'd love to meet her, or I'd
Hmm.
love to connect with that guy, and they're local to your area, and then they're part of
Yeah.
an event, or seeing what events they may be going to. We could see some of
Yeah.
that stuff inside LinkedIn is a great place, especially, when you think about building that power network, right? So
Hmm.
let's dive into that. How do we when it comes to there, there's moments where we're just going to go and meet people, right? We don't know what's going to
Yeah.
transpire. Let me just go there with an open heart to serve and connect, and hey, where are you from, what are you doing, and what opportunities are there. And then
Hmm.
there is more intentional of, I need to connect with her. There's
Hmm.
definitely, I see some synergy that could potentially happen.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that? Like, I know
Hmm.
for me, it's like just going on LinkedIn, like I definitely want to connect with her
Yeah.
somehow. And when sometimes I show up to events and I'm like, oh my God, I know you. And I don't know them, but I mean, like, we know each other from LinkedIn, and that is an
Yeah.
icebreaker. I find that to be,
Exactly. I know. I feel like sometimes you do go somewhere and I'm like, I feel like I know you because I follow you and I see you, and that's what happens today, right? Of course, with all of the aspects of social media, it does feel like sometimes we really get to know people a little bit more, even though we've only spoken to them once or just connected, right? But I think to answer your question, when we say like creating that network, right? I think it is up to you as a person of what you're looking for, right? To create something where there is some type of relationship afterwards, right? You meet someone at a networking event, you had a great conversation with them. So you may, you should ask for a business card. And of course, right now, like I know that a lot of people say like business cards are being starting to get expired, right? But have your business card or one of those like QR codes that that cards that are very easy to find. Even on LinkedIn, you can just pull up your QR code and be able to add people there. So some method that you're going to remember and have this person's email, right? To be able to follow up with them. And I think that is where that comes up to you, where you're able to like connect with this person afterwards. Hey, you know what? Great talking to you about Puerto Rico. I'm so excited to hear that we're both from the same place. Let's connect. I'd love to, to talk to you about some other, get to know you a little better, or talk to you about some other projects I'm working on. So I think that if you take it from outside of that and and do a follow up, invite someone for a cafecito like you did to me, a cafecito or lunch or something, right? Where you're able to then get to know that person a little bit better, and then you can talk a little bit more, I think, about what you do, right? And see if there is a synergy there, or something where you could be a mutual beneficial relationship for both of you, right? But I think it does take that follow up. You can't just leave it as, great, she met with me, we had a great conversation, and that's it, I will say, like, some of my closest friends I met, a few years ago when I was, actually volunteering and networking for the Women's Fund. I remember, like, we had such a bond, and we met through like several times through like lunches and stuff, and had so much in common. And now they became even friends. Where before it was like, oh great, we're here talking about business and ideas or projects, and then so suddenly now they become your friends. Even what I can give you an example with my book, which I thought was something that I had an encounter, but it's something so new now where you have all of these accountability meetings. I don't know if you've are part of any, right? But I hear that it's been very common, right? But for example, I went to a networking event or a summit, right, about and it was about children's book, because I also have a children's book that that I wrote,
Yeah.
and I recently had published. And so I went to the summit. It's in Vegas. There's so many people there, but I connected with these two women who had very similar backgrounds. We were moms, we were professionals. It was our first book. We had amazing conversations, and then after the summit had it passed, we had each other's numbers, and we kept like connecting on different topics. Oh, by the way, how did you do this? And by the way, I saw that you did this. And then we're like, you know what? We have a lot to learn from each other. Why don't we just make a 30-minute accountability call every Friday at 12 o'clock, where we join in a Zoom call and talk about ideas? What are you seeing? What are you doing? And just kind of like helps us, right, to keep motivated and be able to like look into different things, right? So, and I met these two fantastic women at a networking event, basically, right? And now I speak to them once a week, and I look forward so much to that call because I always leave inspired by what someone says, right? So,
Yeah.
so I think like little things like that help you create that.
I absolutely love that story because that's really what happens, right? Itzel wrote, I just invited all of you to Cafecito, which I worked with in the
Mhm.
past. I love talking about coffee. That is awesome. So, one thing that I find funny, like at events, and I just did this recently, it's like when I meet, how do you remember these people, right? Because yes, the QR code, I definitely, LinkedIn is my first, is my,
Mhm.
like, let's connect on LinkedIn. Because if we connect on LinkedIn, then we'll at least, but also like when I save them on my phone, right? If somebody's like save, we're saving each other's numbers. How do you save them on your phone? Because I'll write the event name, like that, the person's name at the event that I was at, or something that they told me. I'll put that, like, literally it shows up when they call, or when they text.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, I do the same thing. I like when I save someone's phone number, I always put like a little detail of where they worked or where I met them or something. So I'm able to find them quickly, because sometimes, yeah, you save so many numbers, and how many Sandras can I have on my phone, right? So
Yeah.
I like put the little note there, So United Latina. Okay, perfect. I remember.
Yeah, yeah. I do that all the time. Even when I send them a message, Sandra, and then like we talked about this, or I don't know, it just depends on who it is. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. A little detail. I think that is it's good for the person to know too you were listening to, right, in that conversation, and that it was something interesting that you were talking about and you left with that, right?
yeah, yeah, and that brings me back to, like, even when you're doing sales calls and things like that, I think you should look at it that same way, right? When
Mhm.
be on the
Yeah.
phone with people and they'd say, "Oh, I love this football team," or this that, and I would write it down. I would write notes, because then you can use those for conversation. Plus, you'll remember things about them, right? We are
Yeah.
so inundated with so much information. Like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
was he this person or was she that person? Was he the guy that told me this? I no me recuerdo. So,
Yeah,
like,
of
I find
course.
that to be, um, to keep us just on point with remembering these attributes of different people. Um,
No, I agree. Yeah, definitely that way. And it's always nice when someone tells you like, "Oh, I remember, how's your son?" Like, or something, something where they remembered something about you, right?
yeah,
So it is. And I think also just being present in the conversation really helps that too. So sometimes we're just like, I need to meet. Like, a lot of people may think that way, but if you're just really like getting to know that person and enjoying the conversation, it's going to be easier to remember who they are.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I love that you brought up your book, and I definitely want to highlight it because that is so awesome. Do you have it to show us?
Thank you. I do actually. I have it right here. Thank you. So it's
Yeah.
called Kissed by the Sun. Yeah, so it was recently published, and yeah, and it's a very exciting project as we talk about like Latinas, and we're like, oh, where are the Latinas, right? So my book talks a lot about that because it's a young girl who is going to school in the States, and she is from Puerto Rico, and how she just feels like she can identify with some of her classmates, and how her family explains to her just like, you're not different, you're Latina, and how you have all of these amazing history and culture, that you haven't gotten to know yet, right? And I know there's so many children that sometimes may have that. They're here, they're maybe in the States, but they're from somewhere else, right? And so it just kind of is a great tool for parents to be able to open up that door and talk to their kids about where they come from and what their culture is.
That is so cute. And so what age group is that for? I know that's
Yeah. So it's for, I would say, around ages of 4 to 7.
okay.
4 to 7 is like a good age for talking about the topic. But it's so funny. I've actually gotten a lot of Latinas who bought the book with no children, and they're like, "This was me," and I feel so identified with this story. So I
Yeah.
think it's something that everyone could enjoy.
Yeah. So Sally writes, I am on the light skin side, but my daughters are kissed by the sun. I always empower them about that. I need that book.
Yeah. Well, I named the book Kissed by the Sun because the first time I visited Puerto Rico when I was 10 years old, that was the first thing my grandmother told me when she met me, was she's like, "Ay, qué piel tan linda, how beautiful your skin." And I actually was like, I didn't feel like my skin was beautiful when I was growing up, right? Because I didn't have like a lot of friends with my specific, like my skin color.
Yeah.
And then my abuela tells me like, "I see, como que el sol te dio un besito," like you were kissed by the sun. And I was very, very close to my grandmother, so I decided to, honor that and name the book Kissed by the Sun.
I love it. I love it. And people can get it on Amazon, right? Is
Yeah,
that
yep, it's on Amazon, exactly, or you can go to kissbythesun.org and see the whole history there. So either one.
awesome?
And
We
I'm
got
actually going to be reading at Barnes and Noble in Coral Gables this Saturday, so I'll be
yay!
there
Good
too. Yeah,
luck. It's gonna be awesome. We gotta put the
yeah.
link to the book to on the comment section of this post. So we
Okay, I will.
I think it's so insightful to see networking with heart to connect and serve. Congratulations on the book. This is
Thank you.
awesome. So you mentioned something that I think is so prevalent to networking, that can't identify factor, right? Because often, even me in my earlier days when I would go out, I'm in a room full of mainly an Anglo community, like I
Mhm,
mentioned before. So, and it was that feeling of, do I belong here? Is this the right space for
mhm.
me? Right. And we tend to do that to ourselves, right? Like, okay,
Yeah.
well, there's not enough, and I think that we need to be able to thrive in every environment, right? When we think
Mhm.
about networking and building a power network, we need to be able to handle conversations and start conversations and communicate with people in every single environment. And yes, that's why we
Mhm.
have United Latinas. That's why, all these
Yep.
organizations that really
Mhm.
support Latinas, to really have and feel like we get you. We
Yeah.
understand. We understand all
Of
the
course, and you can form part of so many of them, because there isn't a competition, which is the beauty. Like Latinas, I always say, like it's the beauty of being able to you support each other no matter what your endeavors are and your projects are. So when we met, we spoke a lot about that because you have United Latinas, and I'm the vice president for Latina Pro, and we all have the same mission, which is supporting and helping Latinas thrive.
Yep, yep. And if you approach like, if that's why I'm very passionate about this, because I've always been there's more that we can do as a unit when we work together. The only way that you can do
Hmm.
it is through the power of network, to really understanding where somebody's heart is, and like, okay, we have the same mission. Let's do stuff together. Let's really
Yeah,
make amplify, because if you're doing something and this person is doing something, imagine coming together. What bigger thing can you achieve? And that's really at the
of course.
basis of what United Latinas is let's come together and let's build these empires. Let's build these
Hmm.
organizations so that we can do more with it, because we know just being around each other, we get we get each other, right, for the most part.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I think it's wonderful when we can be able to work together and build that network, because it is true. Like it's nice to have that support system with other women that support your vision.
Yep, yep. All right. So I know we're getting close to time, but I wanted to ask you, how do you differentiate quality networking versus quantity networking, right? Because
Hmm.
there's, like you mentioned, it's going out there, being intentional. Sometimes you're in a space, like some people are just, like I mentioned before, they're just, okay, give me your card, and
Yeah.
and that's not a good mindset and approach
Mhm.
to it. But so how do you toggle between, or what advice would you give someone that is going to a networking event and really should be intentional, but maybe focused
Mhm.
on the immediate, I need to communicate with people so they know about my business and I'm able to share my message. How do
Mhm.
you, what advice would you give someone that really is
Mm.
coming from that space, that headspace?
So I think that, not just going into a space, right, with the intention of like, I'm going to introduce myself with so many people as possible, right? Because that's quantity, right? It's just
Yeah.
trying to like, hi, bye, here's my card, that's my card. And you do meet those people, like, in reality, it is maybe they are collecting cards for something, right? I think that the quality is going to come from the conversations and really getting to know the people that are there, and as you're talking to them and getting to know a little bit more about their businesses and all of that, and creating that like true connection, I think that that's where you're going to find the quality of conversations, right? That's when you're going to be able to maybe, hey, you know what, maybe you met this individual but there's someone else that works in that company or in that group or somewhere. Then you can actually be able to tell that in person, you know what, Sandra, I really want to meet this person from the chamber. I noticed that, you have been very connected to them, or your group does things with them. Do you mind introducing me? And because we've met and we have a more quality conversation, most likely then you are more inclined to be able to help me and make that introduction, right? That if I'm just focused of like, I need to meet that person today, who maybe they're busy, they're a speaker, maybe they're not going to remember you, right? And then you lost the opportunity there to be able to create some type of future connection with that individual, right? Instead of just getting to know.
Oh, we lost you. I think we lost her. I don't know if her phone died or qué pasó. We'll give her another minute. Um, but just to kind of finish up her thought on that, the quality of connections is so important. And the only way that we're going to have quality connections is if we're having these conversations with people, right? Let me see if she is, if her,
Hello.
yay, okay. I was like, oh
Okay.
no, her phone died or
I
something.
know. I don't know. It's so weird. It just kind of got me out there. But
Yeah.
hopefully we're there. We're back. We're back. Yay.
Yay. Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was saying the importance of those quality connections. Love it. ¿Qué pasó? Everybody's asking what happened. What happened to you?
Yeah. Perfect.
Yay. So, all right. So we are almost at time.
Mhm,
Definitely want to give you like, share any like last thoughts or,
mhm.
advice or anything. And again, we want to put your book in the comments of this. So I'll put it on LinkedIn,
Yes.
YouTube.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I mean, and this was such a wonderful conversation. So thank you so much for having me here. And, again, I would just say to wrap it up, and I think we've mentioned this, but just in general, when you go to a networking event, it's going to be an exchange of experiences, of, of connections. So just go and enjoy it. Don't be afraid to talk to people, put yourself out there, meet someone new. And as long as you leave with like one person that you really had a true connection with, it's worth it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Brenda. You have been a joy to have. I'm so excited to have met you at a networking event and to see
Yeah,
what transpires and what we can do together and build together over the next coming years.
absolutely. Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to many, many conversations with you.
I know, I know. The first real one of many, so we'll have
Yes,
more.
absolutely.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Catch us next week. Next week, we are going to be at Latitude. So if you guys are joining at Latitude, definitely connect with us. We'd love to meet you in person there. But I think we're going to do a live stream from somewhere in the hotel in Latitude. So stay tuned for that and catch that for next week. But
Perfect.
guys, go out there, be courageous, go meet people, networking. That's what's going to move the ball forward, and really make a difference in your life, right? Thank you. We got a couple comments here. Thank you guys again. Y hablamos al próximo. Take care, guys.
Perfect.
Be well.
Bye.